Hey, welcome everybody. I'm Dr. Nell with the Reading League Montana, and I am really grateful for a panel of leaders in the field who've been working in the space of bringing high quality early childhood education to many Montana young learners. And we have new legislation in the state, and it's been really a positive experience, as well as kind of a gauntlet of figuring out how we're going to do it in all of our districts, and how we figure out the funding, and how we figure out who we hire, and how we figure out who qualifies, and all of these questions. So I asked some leaders in the state who already have some great programs going, and if they would just step up and give some thoughts of how things are going for them, so all of you out there can just hear about other people's journeys, so it can make your journey easier and maybe more efficient. So that's the goal today. And three of our leaders are at the Early Childhood Conference in Missoula, joining us from a field. We're so grateful. So if you would, I'm going to hand the baton off to the ladies in the field. Just give a quick introduction to who you are. Oh, you're muted. Maybe it's not going to unmute. You're still muted. All right, well, we're going to have Casey unmute first, maybe, and then you guys can figure out your your button. Casey, go ahead. Tell us about who you are and where you at in this process.
Hi, Casey Bertram, Superintendent, Bozeman Public Schools. We are full steam ahead on implementation of House Bill 352, both for summer jumpstart programming for 2B kinders through 2B third graders, as well as an expansion of our 4-year-old programming next school year with approximately 4 programs and special education programming tied to that at the classroom level.
What I loved hearing about that is that you're being inclusive of all areas. And part of this series, we have a team of special education directors joining to talk to us about how this legislation helps us supply early interventions for all children, and how to be very inclusive of all of our children who may already have IEPs. And so we'll get more into that. But are y'all out there in Missoula able to turn your mute off, or did it work or not? There we go. Oh, they're still working on it. Okay, so I'm going to introduce Megan Roth is a teacher on special assignment in Bozeman School District, and Penn is a principal in Livingston, and Cole Getton is in Great Falls, and they're all leaders of early learning programming in their respective districts. Megan works with Casey in Bozeman School District, and we're very grateful for their participation today, and hopefully now Ann Penn's joining, so we'll hopefully have some sound.
Can you hear us now?
Yeah.
Yay! Okay.
Okay. There we go. I'm really grateful you're joining us from the field. So let's just talk about just a brief overview of your current early learning environments and how you've considered the alignment to the new legislation, and what you've had to do to really gear up and retool to be in alignment with the rules that we're asked to comply to. Who wants to start? Casey, do you want to start with that as a superintendent?
Sure. The Bozeman footprint of early childhood education was currently two running start classrooms with the old legislation around exceptional circumstances, and then 2 classrooms of special education preschool serving 3- and 4-year-olds. In addition to that, in 2021, Bozeman launched Bozeman Reads, and we hired Megan, and she's been doing amazing work in our community, bringing community partners together, doing a lot of work around home visits, teaching early literacy to families, doing engagement events, training of preschool providers, and just really bringing the community together around early literacy. So that set the stage for the expansion, and we're very grateful for House Bill 352, which will give us some sustainable funding moving forward.
So, Ann Penn and Colette, you're out there in Great Falls and in Livingston, and you have similar because you were all under something that we called the Montana Preschool Development Grant. And actually, the differentiation between where we were and where we're going in these early learning languaging, the early targeted literacy interventions. How are you taking what you had and moving into the future with what the new rules are and tooling up for those classrooms under this HB 352?
Okay. In Livingston, hi, I'm Penn here. We don't necessarily, we've done a lot of work with the science of reading. We were fortunate enough to have Montana Comprehensive Literacy.
I'm listening to the bill.
And which was awesome, and it was able to give some of our or all of our educators professional development based in the science of reading. So we've been teaching to the science of reading for a few years within our 4-year-old program. But with respect to admittance criteria, that's been a big change for us. In the past, we've gone through an income-based process for letting students into our program, and now we will be using literacy and language indicators to determine whether students qualify or not for our program. So that's been a pretty big
And you're on mute.
And
Yeah.
Penn, you moved to mute quick. I'm not sure what happened.
You're back.
I'm back. I think I was just speaking to just the admittance criteria being different. And so now we'll be using literacy language indicators to determine how students get into the program. But with respect to what we teach, it'll all be based in the science of reading, and that will continue. A couple other changes, we'll have to offer half-day option for families per House Bill 352, and that will be different. Right now, we're just a full-day program 5 days a week, and parents will have that option. And then, of course, parents will have to opt in, so they'll have to sign off that they give us permission to screen, and we'll have to screen in April, May, and June, which will be different than our August screenings that typically take place right before the school year begins.
Hi, I'm Colette. We have programming in Great Falls, and we currently have 15 elementary schools, and we provide the early learning opportunity for 8 of those elementary schools based on their free and reduced lunch. We look at title status. We will continue to use that criteria just based on the sheer volume of students that we would have to enroll if we went to all in Great Falls. So local control, the district has decided to stick with our title schools at this time for enrollment. You spoke a little bit about early reading first and the preschool development grant. Those skills that our staff learned throughout all of that professional development were solid. That coupled with science of reading is the full the full deal. So I still have about half my staff from the original grants. So we just keep moving forward with professional development and instilling good practice that's age appropriate. And we're looking forward to the screening process moving forward. We did have to buy a new screening tool. We had to train all the staff, obviously, so that we're doing that screening with fidelity. And we're going to start our screening on the 22nd. And we're treating it similar to a child find, actually. We made appointments for all families to bring their child in so that we can do some rapport building with the family and the child, do the assessment, and then make some determinations about how many will qualify. Our goal is to qualify about 140 children in the end. So we'll see.
Colette, can we talk a little bit about the numbers? You just said 140, and I think that this is a really important thought process because it's also, you have a lot of classrooms, right? And you had a lot of capacity already. That's very different than if you're somebody who didn't even have a classroom, didn't have the capacity, didn't have the educators. So can you just talk about how you ended up choosing how many you would be admitting into the program?
Well, based on Chapter 63 guidelines, we know that 18 children with a teacher and a paraeducator would be the max we would have in a class. And Great Falls Public Schools made the commitment back when we first opened the Early Learning Family Center that all teachers would be highly qualified and all teachers would have a teaching degree. And that makes a really big difference. It costs a little bit more, but in the end, it was very worth the investment. So based on the capacity of the building size that we have, because we have all of our early learning in one location, we're basically maxed out in space right now. So we know that we couldn't really expand. We expanded last year. We added a military class using impact aid dollars. So now we can offer that opportunity to military families based on what they've experienced in other states that they did not find as an option in the state of Montana. So we just felt that was what was right to do for our military community. We have a classroom for them as well. So based on that's the capacity we have right now, we would like to be able to offer it to all of our 15 elementary schools to say that we have the opportunity to enroll for an early ed opportunity, but at this time we just don't have the capacity. And right now, I mean, we've sustained the program we have based on federal dollars, on grants, early reading first, and then the MCLD, striving readers. It's just been one federal grant after another. So the fact that we're going to be getting some state funding, there was already momentum behind all of this. So we're just going to take that momentum and run with it.
I love that meaningful trajectory that you've taken. You've really put a lot of intention into building a really strong foundation that builds community bridges too. So between your public-private sector to everybody knowing that what the Great Falls schools offer is something that's high quality and it's meaningful and that children's lives are changed. And so thank you for telling us your story. We don't just arrive at this moment. It's a lot of work to get to that.
No. And I think it's important. It's important to note that in Great Falls, we have 800 kindergartners, 800. So the fact that we only have seats for 140 children means that we need the community to step up and we need community partners. Head Start, they're able to enroll a couple hundred, but we have done some just community studies and know that there are about 400 children that are not getting an opportunity before they go to kindergarten. So we are just skimming the surface. This is just the tip of the iceberg. So these community initiatives are going to be critical in this.
And in our third session in this series, we're talking to address the public-private partnerships and bridges that we must keep strong and healthy because our school districts still won't be able to educate all early learners, the 800 you have. And Casey and Megan, how many do you have in Bozeman?
Incoming kinder classes are around 500 students. And we have longitudinal data showing about 30% of those students come in without requisite literacy skills. So that casts a net of about 150 students. Similar to Great Falls, we're not able to scale this up quick enough or have space for 150. So we're going to be serving about 75 students in the 4-year-old programming in the fall. I think a heavy lift for districts with House Bill 352 is year one. And so because A and B funding is in arrears, you don't get A and B, it's a year away. And so this first year of Jumpstart and Classroom, for any classrooms you aren't currently running, is one-time funds. So in Bozeman Public Schools, that's a $400,000 investment of one-time funds to prop up the Jumpstart program in the summer and to expand from 2 to 4 classrooms in the fall. The beauty is the following year when the A and B dollars flow for those kids.
That's right. That's a big, knowing that it's coming is really important and planning for that and knowing how to build that into the sustainable plan is part of the questions I get asked. And I am not the fiscal responsible person in a school district. So I'm really glad we have Casey here and Colette. But I also think that part of this series, I need to have the fiscally minded, the people who are responsible for allocating and moving all the money. I think a lot of you have questions around that out there. So doubt that you can't, I think you should ask them in this when we open up to questions if you have them, because I know that there is some misunderstanding about that. So just know that we're willing to talk about it. And Pan, thinking about the dialects we've had in Livingston, would you like to talk about how many students you also could serve to continue on the thought of our private, our bridges with our coalitions are really still very, very important. All children deserve great, high quality education, yet our schools can only educate so many, even with this funding source, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So in Livingston, we're quite a bit smaller. We have on average about 80 kindergartners coming in. And within our current 4-year-old program, we have capacity to serve about 36. And so with that, yeah, over half of our population does not step through our threshold until they're 5 years old. So what we've done through a strength-based coalition collective impact framework is we get together monthly with our Parks and Rec Department director, our Community Health Partners director, our public library staff, medical providers from the hospital and other clinics, as well as childcare and early education providers within our community, and have conversations about how we can work to support all students, no matter what background they're coming from. And with that, we've kind of agreed upon some language around literacy and the language supports that are necessary for a child to be able to read. We've brought in consultants like Nell to do some professional development with these collective impact groups to be able to help explain to them why language and literacy are important, and how through birth to 5 supports within our community, they can encourage that development and support families and providers with that. We've also purchased curriculum such as Haggerty, which is a phonemic awareness curriculum, and distributed that out to our providers and offered to come in and teach lessons to support that. So just really through that collective impact, we accomplish much more as a unified front through that collective impact framework. And so just encouraging you to use your existing resources and connections and coalitions to strengthen those partnerships so that you can reach every child, because I do believe it's possible, but it's not possible for just a school district to do that on their own.
Thank you, Ann Penn. I honestly think very fondly of the day in February where I was able to work with the Park County Coalition. So building those bridges is really important, and being educated in birth to 3 and 3 to 5 space in the same information about the importance of early screening and early interventions that really support that foundation, that help a young learner really accelerate when they move into kindergarten. And building those oral language foundations is a profound experience for many children that when they don't have it, it really impacts their literacy in kindergarten. So we can't say enough about that. So building those bridges is important. I think my big question that I get asked a lot is that knowing all the details of the rule of the House bill, knowing what the screeners, we have an advisory list. There's also a time limit of when you're supposed to give them. So I would love to hear about how that process has unfolded for you, how you've selected screeners, how you've gone forward and planned for that to unfold, because it's happening right now. It's April, May, or June right now. So who wants to start talking about that? I think people need to hear more about those details.
I can go ahead and talk about that real quickly. I because of being on the advisory council, I had been obviously kind of growing some things behind the scenes as far as like looking into the research of what literacy tool we would use, knowing that I would have to put some money aside to purchase a tool, and then preparing, for like a training for the staff and getting that on the calendar. So some things that were going on behind the scenes. But most importantly, we could not release, and we did not release any information until we knew the Board of Ed approved the draft rule. And once they approved that, it was green go. We started pushing out on social media that our program was going to look different. Annie spoke to that. We had been enrolling students under exceptional circumstances. So we had to educate the community, first of all, on what that was, and then to inform them that moving forward, it would look different. And this is what it would look and sound like, introducing the screening opportunity. From there, it's in motion right now. Our phone is ringing off the hook actually, because I pushed it out to all of our feeder schools, the 8 elementaries. They are putting it on their Facebook pages, pushing it out and remind messaging. We have notes going home to families. So the day we sent all that home, our phone started ringing off the hook, and I could just hear the secretary making appointments. So I know the community was just chomping at the bit and, been waiting for this. Like, when is it time? When is it time? So it's going to move fast forward here now through April with our screenings, and then in May and June. And it was kind of interesting actually when we realized that we were not going to be able to collect A and B or count the students after they enrolled in September and October. That was an initial shock actually after we processed that. Like, is that really what this is saying? We still have the flexibility to enroll them. We just will not be able to count them in that A and B count. So we're going to have to be very strategic through our screening process and just really make sure that we're out there and covering as many bases as we can to get enough children in the seats moving forward.
Let's clarify, Colette, you had an existing program that the community already knew about, and you still had to be extroverted about how we get this message out there. Let's make sure it's on Facebook. Let's get it through all of our wires, so people who have influence, who can get families in to help us fill the seats, because this is an excellent opportunity for high quality instruction. It still took pounding the pavement, didn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm sure we've missed a few bases even, but we kept thinking, where else could we get this information out to families? We have it on the coalition. We have it at our pediatricians' offices. We have it on our district webpage. So we're just thinking no matter how well we think we've covered the community, we always learn of a population or a pocket of people that we did not reach. So we're doing our best with what we have. Yeah.
And in Bozeman, we've found that local media outlets are more than happy to help support us free of charge. And we have had absolutely overwhelming response. I was really concerned about being able to get people into screen. And as soon as you mention the opportunity for free 4-year-old care, that's a massive burden for families who have preschool age children. So I think currently we will have 240 kids signed up to screen across for Jumpstart PK camp and also for 4-year-old seats next year. So I've been really, really pleased with the community response we've received. But again, I think it's important to the library, your United Way, your health department, your family engagement, anyone who shares the same goals of supporting children and family, they are more than happy to share your message and really utilizing those resources and partners.
And I think it's so important if you're out there and this is just a new thing for you. These folks have gone the way, they know the way, they're showing the way, and they're really willing to answer questions. So don't hesitate in writing me. The email came from me, and I will make sure you get connected with people who can help you with answers. But one of the things I want to continue in this dialogue talking about is what are some of the obstacles around the rule and the House bill? We have time deadlines and when we can do things and when we can't do things. So let's just be realistic and talk about, you fill these seats, then what happens? Can you do Jumpstart this summer, or do you have to wait till next summer? Or you fill these seats and when does it start this fall? What does that look like? Casey, do you want to talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, I think it's still yet to be determined what the final rules are, but I can tell you, as my understanding is, and I want to also put it out there that I believe there's going to be some clarifications in the next legislative session around this topic. And I also know that year one's going to look different than future years. So my understanding and how we've pivoted and shift based upon the rules that we are reading is for summer Jumpstart needs to start after July 1 during this first year. In future years, it can be between your school calendar years, and you can spread it out across the summer. It needs to be 120 hours of total duration, at least 4 weeks. And so for Bozeman Public Schools, that translates to a 6-week 4-day-a-week program beginning July 8th, running into August, and we can squeeze those 120 hours in. 120 hours is a lot of instruction over a summer. We're very excited about that. Our understanding is that those students would then be included on your fall enrollment counts for future A and B funding. Similar to Jumpstart, the entrance criteria for both programs being a high quality literacy assessment that looks at early language and literacy. For our Jumpstart programming for our current K through 2 kids, that's our Acadience assessment benchmark tool that we already use. For the kids that are going to be 2B kinders, or they're going to be 4-year-olds in the fall in our classroom program. That's Megan's role using a Peli tool and is out in the community with a bunch of community partners rounding those kids up for fall programming. I'll let the others add anything to that, and then I'm really interested if there's any specific questions.
All right, what else could you add to that, Ann Penn?
Yeah, in Livingston, we are only focusing on our 4-year-old program this year. We we didn't have the capacity and weren't in a position to go ahead and start our Jumpstart program this summer. We just wanted to focus solely on our 4-year-old program and making that meet the criteria for House Bill 352. We spent quite a bit of time with Nell and others just framing out what our assessment pathway would look like. There is beauty in some ways of local autonomy and being able to create your own assessment pathway based on your context. And so for us, we are using a 3-prong approach. The first assessment we'll administer will be our language screen, which is out of Oxford. It's normed 3 and up, age 3 and up. And so that will kind of be our first line of defense, if you want to call it that. And if a child flags in one of those subtests, it's a very quick, simple assessment on an iPad. It takes about 10, 15 minutes. If a child flags with a standard score of 90 or below on one of those indicators, we're just going to go ahead and say, yep, that child's in the program. If they do not, we're going to dig a little bit deeper and take a peek at of phonological awareness skills as well as alphabet knowledge skills. And we're just pulling out some subtests from the KTEA with pre-K norms as well as the SELF for the phonological component. So it's a 3-pronged approach. And again, like Nell said, happy to share or support any district that's interested in hearing about how we're going to assess. But there's obviously other tools that have been vetted that are just one tool. I think it really just comes down to your context and what you're seeing with need to support instructionally within your community.
And I think I'm pretty much an assessment nerd, and I realize I think in this protocol, we really have to always consider the resources you have. Knowing the context of both Bozeman and Livingston and talking to Colette, your context sometimes will drive the assessment tool connection. Like you might had an Acadience tool, and Acadience has an early learning screening, and that was the Peli. And so there are other contexts where we have language screen. That's where Livingston is at. And it doesn't, having a tool that helps you find risk, what's important is that you're using it uniformly for all children, and you'll know where your risk is when all children are given the same tool with reliability. The results will be very consistent. So we can talk more about that later, but I think to the crowd here, there's an important question, and I'm hopeful one of you all has the answers. Can someone speak to the existing private pre-K programs and how they could partner with schools or communities? And are there funds also to support private programs, or no?
Start it if you want me to. I think with respect to the home-based program that was written into House Bill 352, which I believe they still have an RFP out there. They're trying to find a program that would meet that criteria, but there will be an opportunity for private providers and parents to partake in this home-based program. Again, kids will have to be screened for their literacy and language skills to be able to partake in it. But that will be an available option. which, as I understand, the state and districts can message about. I don't think we as a school district would have much involvement with that piece, but that would be an available option. What else?
To be honest, I know there was some conversation about can a private provider contract with the local school district to be the HB 352 provider, and I'm not sure where that has all landed, truth be told. Do you know?
No, haven't
Casey,
anybody-
do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think, back to local control, districts can sign MOUs with community partners, and those could be for-profit or nonprofit providers. So I think there is a mechanism. For example, if a community doesn't have access to endorsed and highly qualified early childhood teachers, and there's a private preschool model in that location, I think through an interlocal agreement that could happen where the district would contract with those. They would come together in some sort of agreement. Outside of that, I think the intention of the bill was to provide funding for early childhood education for Montana's public schools.
Okay. So Catherine, I think your answer came there. Let's talk about who are those that we can put into the positions of educating our young learners. What does the bill ask for? What are the rules? Are the teachers, what level of certification was agreed upon?
It was addressed. Oh,
Go ahead.
I was gonna say it was addressed specifically through Chapter 63 and talking about the highly qualified educator piece as well as the paraeducator and the level of education they have to have. I can't remember what number it is within Chapter 63, but it was I think it stayed the same as it was in the previous Chapter 63. That section was not amended, but
Yeah, 4-year-old teacher can have a K-8 endorsement, K-8 teaching license. They also can have a P3, obviously, but it's not it's not required. It's preferred.
Okay, thank you for answering that. Yeah. Any questions from the field? Throw them into the chat box or turn on your mic and just ask us. We'd love to hear your questions.
Hi, this is Doug Richards, Superintendent Principal of Boulder Elementary School. So in our second year of our Kinder Cub program, we do have our teacher is early childhood development degree. We do the dial assessment and we have just purchased the Pelly. My question is, we have our Kinder Cub Roundup, or our kindergarten roundup coming up April 12th. I've had two of my teachers ask if we can do the Pelly during our meet and greet in August. Can I provide that Pelly information, or do I need to do, because we have to have our dial assessment and we have to do this Pelly? That's a lot of testing for 4 and 5-year-olds in one day. Do I need to set up? This is all new, so please bear with me this has been kind of a flight by the night thing. So any help would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah.
Really love the question, and I know Ann Penn has some things to say about that, so I'll let you jump in, Ann.
Yeah, absolutely. I would prioritize certainly the Pelly, Doug, on the assessment list that was vetted by the Board of Public Ed Advisory Council that kind of created some of the rules around the House Bill 352. The Pelly is a tool that you can use, and it can help you dig into those skills that they're going to be looking for to see that kids are, flagging in. The dial, can I ask you a question? Are you using that because of the comprehensive literacy grant? Is that?
Well, we're going to administer that as our literacy grant goes out.
Okay.
And again, this is my first year here. I know
Yeah.
they've used it in the past as a
Sure.
child find item.
Sure.
And so I'm just yes, I am trying to use it to finish up the literacy and make it appropriate for the end of our literacy grant. And again, we only did the speech portion of it because it was slipped by last year. So
Okay.
early this year, before kids came in, we called them all in and did a quick. And so I'm pretty sure that I can get by with just doing the speech portion of it because we won't have adequate, I mean, that's just not a good comparison. If I do all 4 tests, that's just silly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say with the dial, it's not one of the assessments that's on the vetted list for House Bill 352. You could certainly use it, and I think it's a great developmental assessment, like you said, to identify kids through like child screening and child find. But I would say, for the sake of House Bill 352, screening in April, May, or June, I prioritize using that PETLI because that's an approved tool and can really pinpoint those markers for your kids and admitting them into the program.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. I just
Yeah.
didn't want, I didn't want whoever comes in as a new person here to all of a sudden in August, and I'm like, I don't think we can wait till August. I know this is new, but I think we have to have this done before we punch out of town this year.
Yeah, that's what my
And
suggestion. I thought I
think
heard you
that's-
say August. And so I was gonna suggest that make sure you get that done in April, May, or June. We also are doing the dial because of that grant for our outcome measure. And so we will no longer just be using the dial for the grant. We do use the dial for our child find, and you mentioned that as well. So we'll use the dial, but for a completely different reason. We're looking for developmental delay and the possibility of evaluation for special education when we use that dial screener. That is a completely different purpose.
Yeah,
We
and
will
that's,
use the PELI though in April, May, or June. August would be too late because OPI said they're actually going to have you enter the date of the screening in a database. So they're going to see that date, and that's how you're going to get your A and B reimbursement. So you're going to want to make sure that that date reflects April, May, or June.
that's perfect. And I'm sorry I don't have all those big, huge numbers you guys have to worry about because we have 10 registered right now for our kinder cubs. So I really,
That's
I
like a
feel
great
bad.
start.
I feel bad for you guys having to, do those rapid numbers and try and, oh my gosh. So my heart goes out to you because that's not going to be fun.
Yeah,
Doug,
but
and
perhaps
I would add, I think the April, May, June piece is the rules we're playing with right now. I fully anticipate that will change in the next
Yeah.
session. The original language in the bill was that district may assess in April, May, or June. I know that OPI needs to do what they need to do to fund schools and have to put systems around this, but limiting that to those 3 months and not allowing access to a student that moves in over the summer is discriminatory, and we'll address that in the next legislative session.
And to add on to that, just realistic for all of you who are bringing in 4-year-old children in the fall, finding all of them in the spring, all of your kindergarten, first and second graders, that's easy peasy. They're already in school. And so having a longer window and definitely allowing you to find children that come in right at school start. So I'm really glad Casey addressed that. We'll have more dialogues about that in the future. But right now, your deadlines are April, May, and June, and they have to be entered into a document for OPI. So just be clear on that. Okay, what other questions? We do have an interesting question from Sarah. Does anybody have any thoughts about how will we handle retention of children in this program? Any thoughts on that?
In Great Falls, whenever we have a family who calls and says, I have a 5-year-old, I'd really like them to participate in your program because I think they need a little extra boost. Administratively, my comeback to that always is we have a program for 5-year-olds and it's kindergarten, and we have highly qualified staff with intentionality to finding if your child will need extra support through the MTSS process. And so trust the systems. Right now, we can't put a 5-year-old in these 4-year-old seats. And so just really encouraging families that enrolling them for kindergarten and trusting the system and knowing that there will be some safeguards in place for if they need extra support. We will move on all the children who are 4 years old. We won't have a 5-year-old unless the only exception would be is if we have a student with an IEP and that it is an IEP team decision that child would benefit from that opportunity. So that is the one exception that I've had with families and staff that we've talked about that. Otherwise, we encourage them.
It's a very tricky piece. It's not addressed in the legislation. It gives the minimum age for these programs. So there's really nothing to say that if a parent held their student out of kindergarten, that they could not technically enroll in a House Bill 352 4-year-old classroom program because it's a minimum age. But I agree with the Great Falls model. We're trying to put 4-year-olds in the 4-year-old program and send 5-year-olds to kindergarten because we have great systems and teachers who love on them, and they will be successful.
I love that. And we have a question in the audience from Patty Johnson. Patty, so get ready to turn your mic on, but I'd like to address a continued thread that you as leaders in this work and doing it for a while, this legislation isn't a mandate, it's an opportunity, right? So can you talk to it as the opportunity that it is, and seeing that possibility? If you were a place that didn't have this opportunity, what would you say to a district who didn't even have an early learning program prior to this? What would you say to them? Who would be willing to talk to that?
I quickly say, and I shout this everywhere I go, this is the most exciting piece of legislation in my 22 years in Montana's public schools, bar none. This is a game changer to have dedicated A and B per pupil funding for kids who are at risk of not reading by 3rd grade, where they can do robust summer school and 4-year-old programming. That's an absolute game changer. And yet we're not where we want to be with fully funded access to preschool for all kids, but this is a giant leap forward. And there's lots of challenges, and there's lots of implementation barriers, and this is a heavy lift, but don't lose sight of this. This is something fabulous. It was a bipartisan bill in the last legislative session, and it's absolutely good for kids.
And it's not mandatory, it's an opportunity.
Right.
So you can jump on it and really try to learn from those who've gone before to build out that programming in your community. So I'm really glad that you're here and asking those questions. So Patty, turn on your mic and ask your question if you would, please.
Yes, so Patty Johnson, I'm up in Whitefish and am also on the board of the Reading League Montana. I'm a speech language pathologist, and I'm currently doing an Orton Gillingham practicum. So I've worked in the public schools for a long time, but am now part of a team who has started an independent school in Whitefish that is very nature-based and project-based learning. Started by 2 speech language pathologists, me with a lot of interest in literacy and language, and another one with interest in executive functioning. So that's really like the framework. So we are a small school. We are a nonprofit. We're an SSO, and we're able to get a bunch of tax dollars for scholarships for kids who need that. We have quite a few kids on scholarship at our school. So I would say we are an integral part of a school community in Whitefish. And just so wanna kind of like wondering a little more about it sounded like your opinions are this funding is only for public schools, and just kind of wondering if there is specific language in the bill, and obviously I can go read it, that is true, or is there an opportunity for a nonprofit school to gain some? Because I mean, we do not charge enough tuition to educate a whole child, and so we also need funding to be able to purchase materials and offer these opportunities. And we want our kids to be getting the science of reading. We offer 95% groups. Core phonics program is our core. We do a lot of morphology work. So we're really in it for the science of reading, but also we need funding dollars too.
Patty, my understanding is the bill is specific to Montana's public schools. So whether it's Jumpstart or the 4-year-old classroom program, those A and B dollars flow to schools via the mechanisms that are in place with OPI. That does not mean that schools then once the school receives those dollars, they do what they want with those dollars to provide high quality education for kids, which could include public-private partnerships. So for example, Summer Jumpstart in Bozeman, we have the fastest growing multilingual English learner population, a 90% increase from last year to this year. And we're running a Spanish focused English language acquisition Jumpstart program in addition to our other Jumpstart programs. And we'll be partnering with a nonprofit provider in town that has ESL certified teachers and we will be paying them. It will operate as Jumpstart because it will meet all the specs of the Jumpstart program. It'll be managed by Bozeman Public Schools. It'll have the 120 hours, the certified teachers, but we're contracting who's doing the teaching because they have the expertise with bilingual employees to pull that off for us. So there are a lot of creative opportunities where public dollars can be combined with private partnerships. There's no mechanism in this bill for public dollars to flow directly to private schools.
Okay, but there is for home programs? Is
There's
that
a-
what understood from me?
So House Bill 352 has three things. It has Summer Jumpstart for Montana's public schools. It has 4-year classroom-based programming for Montana's public schools, and it has home-based programming for Montana children. And so the home-based programming could be parents signing up and they have their kids in private school or homeschool or public school. It's a third piece of the puzzle, yet to be determined who that provider is and what the mechanism is for that. It's also one piece of the legislation that has a fiscal cap on it. So once those seats are out, those seats are done, and that will be managed by Montana OPI.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
All right, Kimberly dropped a link into the chat for the FAQ that OPI created on lots of questions. So I think it's really important to follow up with that. I'll include that link when I send it out, and she's making it accessible for all of us, which is really great. Thank you, panelists, for offering such clarity and wisdom. I don't think that this is an easy lift if you're brand new to this experience. It requires a lot of thought partnering, and it is a journey of, if you haven't had a screening tool, there's a process in selecting a screening tool. If you're going to start it this year, it has to be like right now, like yesterday, because it's April already. If you don't have a teacher that has the qualifications, that's also really important to consider. So there's a lot of things in this process, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't start. Right. It's very, very important to really see a vision that this is an opportunity for everyone. And I always love the quote, just say yes, because the opportunities on the other side of yes are really incredible for the students you serve. Does there any additions from the panelists that want to close out and just give us all a send off? What thoughts?
Yeah, we were able to hear from Representative Barker, who sponsored the bill, and then Senator Shannon O'Brien this morning, who carried it in the Senate. And this is an opportunity to show through data that early childhood education works in a bipartisan environment, and it's such a prime environment for us to be able to demonstrate with data that this is worth keeping around. If we don't, as a state and in our local communities, jump on this opportunity, it will go away. Because if 50%, he even said today, like if 50% or less of school districts in Montana aren't really wanting to take on this opportunity, that's saying to the legislature, like, this doesn't matter to Montanans. And so it's, I know it's hard to stand up, but there are a lot of people who are here to support, and it's really such a powerful opportunity that's outcomes driven, and has really strong bipartisan support right now to finally move the needle on state-funded early childhood education in Montana.
Well said, Megan. And I think just piggybacking on what she said, I think it's going to be very important to all of us who are signing up or are morphing into 4-year-old early literacy programs to teach the science of reading. Because just assessing kids in April, May, and June on markers and then throwing them into a program won't make a difference. And that's, like Megan said, what we really need to step up and be able to do and show, so that we can continue having conversations about hopefully universal preschool in our state and elsewhere. So just really lean on your resources, lean on Nell. You're obviously on this call because you're interested in the science of reading and the Reading League's work. But as you're talking to your colleagues around the state, just lean on all of us, all of these resources, and reach out if you have any questions or need any support at all. And thanks for being here.
Awesome. I really can't say enough about the the colleagues, these are friends and colleagues who are really leading the work well. And they are also in very clear understanding of what the science of reading can do for educators who are equipped to deliver effective instruction and what it means for children who get that instruction. So they can speak to that for children who are 4 years old through 3rd grade because they've been doing the work for years. So if this is new to you, we're here to help you. And this is that's why the Reading League Montana was created. We want to help inspire change so we can really push the needle for leaders, for educators, and for children in Montana. So thanks for joining us. And let me know if you have any questions, and I'll make sure our panelists get them. And I'll push this recording out onto our channel, and we hope to see you next time. All right. Goodbye, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nell. See you later.
Yes.